Okay, class, we want to have a little brief discussion on bone fractures. When we classify bone fractures, we generally can look at four different things. What is the position of bone ends after the fracture? That means, is it displaced? Okay, for example, let's look at this here. This right here, this bone here is still in its same proper orientation. Still in its proper orientation. Okay? If it was displaced, let's say it's like this. Now you see this one here? It's not in its proper orientation, so it's displaced. So in other words, this one here is non-displaced, and that one I just showed you is displaced. So we go back. Okay? Go back. All right. Is the break complete through, or is it partial through? Is the break all the way through, or is it kind of a partial break? Kind of all the way through, or is it a partial break? Complete or partial? Okay. Another one. What is the orientation of the break? Is it linear, going up and down, or is it transverse, going across? See, is it linear, or is it transverse? The next thing. Did it break through the skin? If it broke through the skin, it's called an open fracture or compound because it went through several tissues. If it didn't, then it's still within the skin. So did it go through the skin or did it not? See, that one would pretty much be going through the skin. Okay. So those are the four things you can look at when we try to classify that. All right, this drawing here kind of shows some things. This is normal bone. This is a transverse fracture. This is kind of an oblique fracture. This is a spiral fracture. How would you get that? Well, let's say you're playing football. Somebody falls on your foot and another person twists you at the same time. Ooh, that hurts. Okay. Comminuted fracture. You decide, or a kid decides, he's going to jump feet first off the roof of his house, of his parents' house. When he jumps down, it's so much pressure exerted that it just breaks the bone in pieces. A avulse means to pull off. A avulse means to pull off. Let's say this person is working in a factory and some kind of way gets his arm hooked in a machine and it just pulls off this. Impacted fracture, I'm going to go to comminuted. All right, let's take this for example. Kid jumps off roof. Bone starts to shear into just a bunch of pieces. But the impact is so much that the jagged edges that are, so this whisk out of the way, the broken pieces like dust. The jagged edges just stick right into one another, impacted. This is a fissure, which is also like a hairline fracture. This is a green stick. You know how, when on a tree, when there's good green leaves, if you try to break it, it doesn't break all the way. So in young people with a lot of water in their bones don't really break all the way. Unlike an older person with not much, they green stick on you. Okay. Here's what we call a Callus fracture from a person's name. It's where the wrist is broken right there. Radius and ulnar perhaps. Okay. Radius and ulnar. Okay. Potts fracture is when the tibia and fibula possibly could be broken. Okay. But particularly the fibula. All right. Here's what I call a pathologic fracture. Let me tell you what that is. This person already, something we're going to discuss in a moment, had osteoporosis. Already had osteoporosis. Think how loose this bone is. All they have to do, if they fell on their hand, this is the arm, they fell, it was going to crack. Pathology. It was already pathology there, and the trauma just took it all away. So that's the Potts we talked about. Okay. Comminuted, compression fracture, like here. Compressed down, that would be in the back there. Then we talked about this epiphyseal tear. Remember, the epiphysis still has that cartilage spiral we talked about. Here's a person who has an ankle break I wanted to show you. They were throwing out trash and slipped. They're a little slightly older and then just kind of broke that. Here's the x-ray after it's been pinned and everything. Again. All right. So we've talked about breaks. Now let's talk about the stages in the healing of a bone fracture. Now, much of this is similar to what you did with healing skin, to be honest. So the first thing that happens is, in those torn edges, is a hematoma, because the blood vessels break. Hematoma starts forming. Hematoma is a closed pocket of blood, and this blood gets there. Okay. Then what's going to happen is, in this area, it's going to, now this is long bone, so it's going to start to make a fibrocartilaginous callus. Okay. Some will go by the name union. So if you see callus or union, it means the same thing. What that means, you start to lay a little cartilage up in there. Remember I told you, and then after you do a little cartilage or fibrocartilage, then the osteoblasts begin making spongy bone. Remember I told you all bone is at first spongy. It's like putting the first coat of paint on your wall. But what happens is, as time goes along and you start putting weight on it, then the bone starts getting thicker. So here we are, fibrocartilaginous callus. That's a soft union. So another name for this is fibrocartilaginous callus, fibrocartilaginous union, or some will call it a soft union because they see it's still soft. It's unstable right there. Okay. Now you're starting to see blood vessels enter, angiogenesis. Spongy bone is starting to be made. All bone starts out spongy. The bony callus, now we're going to replace the fibrocartilaginous callus with a bony callus. Okay, about 2 months. And that's what you have now, a bony callus. But see how rough and everything it is? Look how rough it is. Okay. It's there, but it's rough. Now this is what we call a hard union, a bony callus. Okay. Then I need to smooth out the edges. And that's what you call remodeling. Smooth the edges out. Now it'll never get completely just like you had it before. It can always be a little rough there. But that's the stages that you go through in that. So here they are again that you can study. Here they are again. And that's what you're looking at there. All right. So that's kind of how bone heals. It really is following similar to how the skin healed. It's, in many ways, it's formally similar in that case. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to end this video here, and then we're going to talk about just a few abnormalities and then close out bone. Okay.